Mr. Baldwin, what prompted you to begin the American Civil Liberties Union?
Well, it was a natural outgrowth of the First World War, because as soon as that war was declared, or even before it was declared, there was a certain hysteria around the country which resulted in breaking up meetings, prosecuting some people for public speeches, stopping newspapers, and a general attack upon people who were opposed to the war. And this went into very high quarters, people of considerable prominence who were opposed to the war. And they had to have legal defense. And I was then engaged with the American Union Against Militarism, a pacifist organization which had opposed the United States entry into the war. And we formed a bureau to defend the rights of these people in court. We conceived to be their rights of free speech and freedom of the press and freedom of assembly. Those are basic American rights under our Bill of Rights, which we thought it was our obligation to defend. Now, some of our friends who defended them were pacifists, and some were people who believed in maintaining the American Bill of Rights in wartime and who were supporting the war. Out of that grew the American Civil Liberties Union, which was formally incorporated in 1920. And we celebrated our 50th anniversary last year after half a century of controversy still over the same principles.
You've seen this country for quite a while operating under the constitutional form of government. The country today compared to the United States, say, in the 1920s when the American Civil Liberties Union began. Are we a freer people? Are we more oppressed people? More repressed people? How would you describe the country today compared to that?
I know that there are a lot of people who are very unhappy about our American democracy, who think it is subject to so many challenges and so many strains that it works very badly. And I suppose that if I were in one of the minorities, if I were Negro, if I were perhaps in some other racial or other minority, I might have some such feeling myself. Certainly the youth today have some such attitude about our democracy. But the facts are quite different. The facts compared with what I knew 50 years ago or 30 years ago indicate that both in law and in practice we've made great advances. A few people now would remember, maybe they aren't old enough to remember, that in the great struggle in the 1920s and 30s for the right to organize unions, hundreds of people were killed by thugs and agents employed by the employers. There was a veritable army of private police employed in order to stop trade unions from organizing. There were lynchings in those days, a couple of hundred a year, of black people and white people too. Mobs that took law into their own hands. Now, we have violence in the United States, but it's not the violence of those years.